Hey everybody, this is Kevin Carafa, and this is the first video in a series of videos I'm going to put up about different Pro Tools tips and tricks. The first thing I want to show is my kind of alternate way of bouncing audio outside of Pro Tools. The most common way that I think most people know is that you highlight a section, probably a whole song, you go to bounce to disk, and then it lets you bounce that audio to a file. There's a couple disadvantages I personally see to that, none of which have to do with audio quality. They're just really in workflow. So I'm going to show you the way that I do it. If I go over to my mix window right now, this is just a track from Devin Townsend. He put up a Pro Tools session, and this is just a very basic mix from the stems, just as an example. I've got a bunch of audio tracks that are going to my buses for my mixing. But normally what would happen is these would just be sent to output 1, 2, which is this master fader here. But what I have going on is I'm sending them to this track right here, this aux track, which I call master in, and that's being sent to two additional tracks, a stereo audio and a stereo aux. The reason I'm doing that is because basically I treat this master in aux as my master fader, and then that gets sent to this audio track to record. But I don't want to have to hit record enable anytime I want to hear something. So I just leave the volume down on this and create an additional aux with the same input so I can always hear what's coming out of this. So the basic setup is audio goes into here as a substitute for my master fader, and then that gets sent to these two tracks, one of which is an audio track that records it, and the other is an aux track that lets me hear it. I can put whatever plugins I want as I would on the master fader, but instead I put them on this aux track, and then whatever they do, that gets sent to this audio track as well. So what ends up happening is if you highlight a whole song while this is in record, and then you actually do the record, the first time it's very similar to the built-in bounce to disk. You have to listen to the whole thing, and it goes through in real time. It doesn't save you any time there, but you end up with one big solid region here that you can then export out of Pro Tools. And this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily know Pro Tools can do. You can highlight any region, be it a small individual region or a whole big region, and as long as it's a clip in this window here, you can right click on it and do export clips as files, and then you can turn that into a WAV file somewhere, or an MP3, or whatever format you want. So this does speed things up in the long run a little bit, because while you're playing back perhaps a final mix while a band's listening, you could be recording at the same time, and you wouldn't have to do an additional bounce after that. The biggest thing that I think is good about this is that it allows you to change individual parts of a song without having to rebounce the entire thing. So let me give you an example. I don't know, let's find a vocal line here. Let's say that we thought that this vocal entrance was too loud or something, right? So you could do whatever you want to do. Let's just make a thing and drag this down. Whatever change you wanted to make. Let's just say that was the change we wanted to make. So instead of having to rebounce the whole song, I just basically highlight a little before and a little after. Right? So that's my selection. And then while this is in record, I actually hit record, and that part gets printed to this track. Right, so now I've got a new clip like on top of this. And just to be safe, I'll go in and make sure that there's no clicks or pops at that part. Zoom in basically all the way. Maybe do a little crossfade. Tab over to my next one. Make sure this lines up. Maybe do a little crossfade just to make sure that these little inserts, don't cause any clicks or pops. And then if I want to export this, I just have to highlight all of it, do a consolidate. And now I have a new file, and I can right click and do export as files. So this does save time. You can do individual sections. One thing to be careful about is, say you're doing one little change in the middle of it, you have to be aware of things like reverbs and echoes, and even on drums, if you're using samples and stuff like that, it might not be the same every time you play back. So basically, if there was like an echo coming up to this, right, but the source sound didn't create the echo, then if I just started right here, then the tail of the echo wouldn't be there. So you just have to listen and make sure nothing's getting cut off or whatever. The best way to avoid it is just to highlight more than you need and do a whole section, and then you could, like, if I undo the consolidation, right, and I only wanted that one line in here, then I can just drag this back and that back so that only the new section is really affected. But again, just use your ears, use your brain, figure out what you got to do. That's basically it. This behaves, pretty much like the bounce function. One other difference, and this is kind of a little bit advanced, so it's not too important, but I've noticed at least that a master track, this fader is pre-inserts. Unlike any other kind of track, this fader is pre-inserts. So a lot of times you can just turn up the master fader if you wanted to hit a compressor harder or a limiter or something like that. But we can't do that on this aux track. So usually what I put as the first insert on my master in track is a simple trim so that I can hit this stuff harder or less or whatever if I need to. All right, that's about it. Make sure you subscribe if you're interested. I'm going to be putting up a bunch more videos, and leave your comments or suggestions or whatever in the comments section. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, leave that in the comments as well. Thanks a bunch.